When I woke up at 2 a.m. to get a glass of water, I found my son slumped over his desk, his phone still glowing beside him. I was going to wake him gently, just like I used to do when he was little, but when I saw what was on the screen, I was so shocked I almost fainted. But I won't be the useless father they think I am. I'm going to show them what the price of betrayal looks like. Welcome to our channel. If stories with deep meaning resonate with you, please like, subscribe, and let us know in the comments where you're listening from. This story includes fictionalized elements created for educational and entertainment purposes. Any similarity to real people or places is coincidental, while the core message remains real and meaningful. The floorboards creaked beneath my feet as I made my way down the hallway at 2 in the morning. At 67, my bladder had become an unreliable timekeeper, waking me at odd hours with increasing frequency. I'd learned to navigate our old Shenandoah Valley farmhouse in the dark, counting steps by memory alone. 12 forward, turn left, 3 more. But that night, something made me pause. A pale blue glow seeped from beneath Brandon's door at the end of the hall. My son had been staying with me for 3 weeks now, ever since his divorce from Heather became final. He'd said he needed time to think, to figure out his next steps. At 42, he'd told me he felt like he was starting over from scratch. The light from his room bothered me. Brandon had always been an early sleeper, even as a child. I knocked softly. No answer. "Brandon," I whispered, turning the handle slowly. You still awake?" The door opened to reveal my son slumped over his desk, head resting on crossed arms. His phone lay beside him, screen still glowing. He'd fallen asleep while looking at something, his reading glasses askew on his face. My heart softened. He looked so much like he had at 16, studying too late for exams. I crossed the room quietly, intending to wake him gently. As I reached for his shoulder, my eyes fell on the phone screen. Everything changed. The text message thread was still open. The contact name at the top read simply H. Heather, his ex-wife. The messages made my blood run cold. H, did you move it yet, Brandon, tomorrow? He'll never know. H. You're sure he hasn't found it? Brandon, Mom doesn't know what he's looking for. It's been hidden for 30 years. H. The property deed to Brandon, everything. Once it's transferred, we split it 60-40 like we agreed. My hand trembled as I reached for the phone, but I stopped myself. If I woke him now, if I confronted him in this moment, he would know I'd seen these messages. Something told me I needed to understand the full scope of what was happening before I revealed what I knew. 30 years. What had been hidden for 30 years, I backed away slowly, my heart hammering. Brandon didn't stir. I closed his door with infinite care and stood in the dark hallway, my need for the bathroom completely forgotten. My mind raced backward through the decades. 30 years ago, I was 37. Sharon was still alive. We'd been running this 200-acre farm together, raising Brandon and his younger sister, Nicole. What could possibly have been hidden then that my son and his ex-wife were conspiring about now? Property deed. They'd mentioned a property deed. I made my way back to my bedroom, but knew sleep wouldn't come. Instead, I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the darkness beyond my window. The farm stretched out their land that had been in Sharon's family for 4 generations. She died 8 years ago, leaving everything to me. Or so I'd thought. As dawn began to paint, the sky gray pieces started forming a pattern. Brandon moving back home 3 weeks ago. His insistence on helping with farm paperwork. The way he'd been so interested in Sharon's old office, the one I'd kept exactly as she'd left it. And now this. Messages about moving something, splitting something 60-40 with his ex-wife. Secrets hidden for 30 years. Tomorrow, when Brandon left the house, I would search Sharon's study. Whatever secret had been buried for 3 decades, I'd find it, even if it destroyed everything I thought I knew about my wife. Morning light was just breaking over the Blue Ridge Mountains when I heard Brandon's truck rumble to life. I stood at my bedroom window, hidden behind the curtain, watching as he backed out of the driveway. The red taillights disappeared down the long gravel road, swallowed by the morning mist that clung to the valley floor. I waited 5 more minutes, then 10, making sure he wasn't coming back. Sharon's study had become a shrine after her death 8 years ago. I'd kept everything exactly as she'd left it. Her books on the shelves, her reading glasses on the desk. Even her coffee mug, long since cleaned, but returned to its spot beside the lamp. I dusted regularly, but never disturbed anything. Today, I would disturb everything. I started with the obvious places. Desk drawers yielded nothing but old bills and Christmas cards. The filing cabinet held property taxes all paid, and current insurance documents, the deed to the farm in my name. Everything seemed in order. But Brandon's message had said something was hidden. Where would Sharon hide something she didn't want found? I worked methodically, removing books from shelves, checking behind picture frames. An hour passed. Then another. I was about to give up when I noticed something odd about the bookshelf on the east wall. It didn't sit quite flush against the baseboard. There was a gap, small, but definitely there. I knelt down, ignoring the protest from my knees, and ran my fingers along the bottom edge. The bookshelf wasn't built into the wall like I'd always assumed. It was freestanding, pulled close but not tight. My pulse quickened. I wedged my fingers into the gap and pulled. The bookshelf moved surprisingly easily on hidden casters, revealing a small door built into the wall itself, no more than 2 feet square. A hidden compartment in my own house behind furniture I'd dusted for decades. The door had no lock, just a simple latch. My hand shook as I lifted it. Inside was a metal box, old and dusty. I lifted it out carefully and set it on Sharon's desk. The box wasn't locked either. Whatever secrets it held, Sharon had trusted that no one would find this hiding place. She'd been wrong. I opened the box. The first document I pulled out was a birth certificate. Lucas Bennett. Born April 15, 1994 in Charleston, South Carolina. Mother's name, Sharon Foster. Father's name, unknown. The paper trembled in my hands. My wife had a son. A 30-year-old son I'd never known existed. Beneath the birth certificate was a property deed. Key West, Florida. Beachfront property, according to the description. The deed was in Sharon's name alone, dated May 1994, just a month after Lucas was born. Value listed at $3.5 million. I sat down heavily in Sharon's chair. $3.5 million. Where had that money come from? There were more deeds in the box. 6 more properties scattered across the country: Colorado, Maine, Oregon, Nevada, 2 in Virginia. I did the rough math in my head. Together, they had to be worth close to $7 million. $7 million my wife had hidden from me. The letters were underneath, dozens of them, spanning years, all from Sharon to someone named Michael. I opened one at random, dated 15 years ago. Michael Lucas asks about his father constantly. I don't know what to tell him anymore. The money you left helps, but he needs more than that. He needs you. Michael. Lucas's father. Sharon had been writing to him for years. I sat there as the morning sun climbed higher, reading through a life I'd never known my wife had lived. A love affair, a child, a fortune hidden across state lines. All of it secret, all of it lies. By noon, I knew what I had to do. I photographed every document with my phone, my hands steadier than I expected. Then, I carefully returned everything to the metal box, placed it back in the hidden compartment, and closed the small door. I pushed the bookshelf back into place and restacked the books, making sure everything looked undisturbed. The county clerk's office in Winchester was a 20-minute drive. Jessica, the young clerk who'd gone to school with Nicole, smiled when I walked in. "Mr. Foster, what brings you in today?" I need copies of all property records associated with my wife's name, Sharon Foster. Her smile faded slightly. That might take a while. Let me search the system. I waited, trying to look patient while my heart hammered. Jessica turned her computer screen toward me 15 minutes later. Here's what I found. Looks like there are 7 properties listed under her name. 7. Just as I'd thought. Can you print these for me? Sure thing. She clicked through the records and something on the screen made her pause. That's interesting. What is? This property here, the one on Route 60. There's a lien filed against it. Recent too, just 2 weeks ago. Ice flooded my veins. Who filed the lien? Jessica squinted at the screen. A Heather Whitfield. Heather, Brandon's ex-wife. The woman he was supposedly divorcing, supposedly splitting from. She'd placed a legal claim on property that technically belonged to me as Sharon's heir, which meant she had access to the deed, which meant Brandon had given it to her. I paid for the copies and walked out into the bright September afternoon. My hands were full of proof that my wife had lived a double life. My son was conspiring with his ex-wife to steal an inheritance I didn't even know I had. Brandon and his ex-wife were still working together. This wasn't just about money. This was a coordinated conspiracy. And it had started long before Brandon moved back home. Nicole's silver BMW rolled up the driveway at exactly 6 that evening, right on schedule. I watched from the kitchen window as my daughter stepped out, immaculate as always, in her tailored suit and heels that had no business on a farm. She worked in finance down in Richmond, made good money, visited maybe twice a year. Until now. She kissed my cheek, leaving the scent of expensive perfume. Hi, Dad. You look tired. I'm fine, sweetheart. We need to talk tomorrow, she said, glancing at Brandon. Family meeting, important stuff. I knew then that whatever conspiracy I'd uncovered wasn't just Brandon's game. Nicole was in it too. The next evening I came downstairs to find the dining room table transformed into a legal battlefield. Trust documents fanned out across the oak surface like playing cards. Nicole sat at the head of my seat with her laptop open. Brandon hovered nearby, coffee in hand. Dad, sit down, Nicole said, her voice taking on that smooth, professional tone she used with clients. We've been worried about you. Worried? I pulled out a chair. Why? Brandon jumped in. You're alone out here on all this land. It's a lot for one person to manage at your age. At my age, I was 67, not 90. I manage fine, I said. Earl helps with the heavy work. That's exactly it, Nicole said, tapping her laptop screen. You're still working like you're 30. It's not healthy, Dad. We've been thinking about your future. Have you now? She missed the edge in my voice, or ignored it. There's a wonderful community called Heritage Gardens about 30 miles from here. Beautiful place. They have activities, medical staff on site, people your own age. I have people my own age. My neighbors. Dad. Nicole's smile tightened. We love you. We just want you to be safe. And the truth is, maintaining this farm is expensive. The property taxes alone, which I pay every year. But you're living on savings, Brandon said. That won't last forever. I looked between them. They'd rehearsed this. Every word, every concerned expression. This farm is profitable, I said carefully. I sell crops. I rent out the back 40 acres. Which is great, Nicole said, pulling the conversation back to script. But wouldn't it be nice to not have to worry, to just enjoy retirement? She slid a document toward me. That's where this comes in. A family trust. Brandon and I would manage the property, handle all the paperwork, the legal stuff. You'd still benefit from everything, but without the stress. I picked up the document, 23 pages of legal language. So I'd sign over my farm. Not sign it over, Brandon said quickly. Put it in a trust. For your protection. Protection from what? Silence. They exchanged a glance. There's a legal matter, Nicole said finally. Something complicated. A man named Lucas Bennett has filed a claim against the estate. If we can get everything into a trust structure before the hearing. What kind of claim, Another glance. It's nothing to worry about, Brandon said. Just someone trying to take advantage. Our lawyer says if we act fast, we can protect the assets. Your lawyer. You've already consulted a lawyer about my property. For you, Dad, Nicole said. Her smile never wavered. We did it for you. The hearing is in 12 days. We need to move quickly. I pretended to study the documents, letting the silence stretch. Finally, I looked up. I need time to think about this. Nicole's smile froze. Dad, we don't have much time. Then you should have talked to me sooner. I stood up. I'm going to bed. Dad. Good night, Nicole. The next morning, I drove into Winchester to see Stanley Griffin. His law office sat above the hardware store on Main Street, same place it had been for 30 years. Stanley had handled Sharon's will, our property transfers, every legal document we'd ever needed. He looked uncomfortable the moment I walked in. Greg, he gestured to a chair. What brings you by? I want to know about Lucas Bennett's lawsuit. Stanley's face went pale. How did Brandon tell you? Does it matter? What's this claim about? He sighed, pulling a file from his cabinet. A woman named Lucas Bennett, well, he's a man actually 30 years old, has filed a petition claiming he's entitled to property from Sharon's estate, specifically a beachfront property in Key West, Florida, worth about $3.5 million. My heart hammered, but I kept my face neutral. On what grounds? He claims Sharon was his mother, that she promised him the property. He's got documentation, birth certificate letters, financial records showing she supported him for years. When did you find out about this? 2 weeks ago. Stanley wouldn't meet my eyes. I received a sealed letter from Sharon's papers. She'd left instructions that if anyone came forward claiming to be her child, I was to give you this letter. Where is it? Brandon picked it up last week. He had written permission from you. Ice flooded my veins. I never gave Brandon permission. Stanley's face crumbled. Oh God. Greg, I'm so sorry. He had your signature. I should have called to verify. But I've known Brandon since he was a kid, and I thought, do you remember what the envelope said? It was addressed to Lucas Bennett. I stood up. Thank you, Stanley. Greg, wait. We need to discuss your options, prepare a defense. I'll be in touch. I walked out into the afternoon sunlight, my mind racing. My son had forged my signature to steal my dead wife's secrets. A letter meant for the son I never knew existed now in Brandon's hands. That evening, when I told them I needed more time to think about the trust, Nicole's professional mask finally slipped. Her smile turned to ice. Dad, she said, her voice dropping to something cold and sharp. Time is something you don't have much of. It wasn't advice. It was a threat. 3 days after that meeting, I forgot where I'd put my truck keys. That had never happened before. I stood in the kitchen, staring at the empty hook by the door where they should have been hanging. My mind felt foggy, like trying to see through morning mist. I checked my pockets, the counter, even walked back upstairs to check my nightstand. Looking for these, Dad. Brandon held up my keys, dangling them from one finger. You left them in the ignition again? I did. 3rd time this week. His voice carried concern, but something in his eyes looked satisfied. He pulled out his phone and typed something. I'm just keeping track. You know, in case we need to show the doctor. The doctor. Right. He'd been talking about me seeing someone. Getting checked out. I'm fine, I said, taking the keys from him. Just distracted. Of course you are. He poured me a cup of coffee, sliding it across the counter. Here, this'll help wake you up. The coffee tasted bitter more so than usual. I mentioned it, but Brandon just shrugged. Same beans we've been using. Maybe your taste buds are changing. That happens at your age. At my age. There it was again. Over the next few days, things got worse. I'd walk into a room and forget why I'd gone there. I'd start a sentence and lose the words halfway through. Worst of all, I'd get drowsy in the middle of the afternoon, so tired I could barely keep my eyes open. I'd never been a napper, not even after 12-hour days working the fields. Brandon was always there watching, documenting. Dad, you asked me that same question twice already. Or, you told me that story yesterday, remember? Each time he'd make a note on his phone, I started to wonder if he was right. Maybe I was losing it. Maybe this was how it started. The slow slide into confusion, into becoming someone who needed to be managed, put away in a place like Heritage Gardens. But something about it didn't feel right. On the fourth morning, I woke up with a splitting headache, the kind that makes your skull feel 2 sizes too small. I'd overslept, and by the time I got downstairs, Brandon had already left for an errand in town. There was a note on the counter, made you coffee, in the pot, just heated up. B. I stared at the coffee pot. Then on impulse, I poured it down the sink. Instead, I made myself toast and headed out to work with Earl. He was mending fence along the north pasture, his weathered hands moving with the efficiency of 40 years' experience. Morning, Mr. Foster, he called out. Then he stopped squinting at me. You feeling all right? Fine. Why? You look better than you have in days, more color in your face. I helped him with the fence work, and as the morning wore on, I realized something. My head was clear, sharp. I wasn't fumbling for words or forgetting what I was doing. For the first time in nearly a week, I felt like myself. By noon, I knew something was wrong. Or rather, something had been wrong, and now it wasn't. Earl, I said slowly. You said I look better than I have in days. Yes, sir. Been worried about you, truth be told. You seemed kind of out of it this past week. What was different about today? He thought about it. Well, you're out here earlier than usual, and you're moving like you got your energy back. He paused. Come to think of it, you skipped your morning coffee, didn't you? Usually, you're on your second cup by now. The coffee. I went back to the house, mind racing. Brandon wasn't home yet. I opened the cabinet where we kept the coffee grounds. The container looked normal, same brand we'd always used. But there pushed to the back of the shelf was a small amber bottle with no label. I didn't touch it, didn't open it, but I knew. That evening, when Brandon asked if I wanted coffee, I said yes. I watched him pour it, saw nothing unusual, but when he left the room to answer his phone, I dumped half the cup into the sink and filled it back up with water from the tap. I pretended to drink it. By 8 o'clock, I had to fight to keep my eyes open. My thoughts turned sluggish, words coming slower. Brandon noticed immediately. Tired, Dad. Yeah, don't know why. Why don't you head up to bed? You've been pushing yourself too hard. I did go to bed, but I didn't sleep. I lay there in the dark, my mind sharp despite the heaviness in my limbs, and understood exactly what was happening. My son wasn't documenting my decline. He was causing it. Whatever he was putting in my coffee, sedatives maybe, or something worse, was designed to make me seem incompetent, forgetful, confused. Everything they needed to prove I couldn't manage my own affairs, that I needed someone else to take control. I needed proof. I needed to know what he was using, how long it would take to get out of my system. And more than anything, I needed help. That's when my phone vibrated with a text from an unknown number. Mr. Foster, we need to talk before you sign anything. Your children aren't telling you the truth. I'm not your enemy. Please call me. Lucas Bennett. I stared at the message for a long moment. The son my wife had hidden from me for 30 years was reaching out. The man who was supposedly suing me for millions. My finger hovered over the delete button. Then I thought about Brandon's satisfied smile when I couldn't find my keys. Nicole's cold dismissal of my questions. The bitter taste of coffee I'd been drinking for days. I typed back, tomorrow. Coffee shop on Main Street. 10 a.m. The response came immediately, I'll be there. I deleted both messages and turned off my phone. Tomorrow, I'd find out if Sharon's secret son was another enemy or the only ally I had left. That night, I lay awake replaying the text message. We need to talk before you sign anything. By dawn, I'd made my decision. I texted back, tomorrow. Main Street coffee shop, 10 o'clock. The response came immediately, I'll be there. The morning air was crisp as I drove into Winchester. I'd told Brandon I was meeting Stanley about paperwork. Not entirely a lie, though Stanley didn't know about this meeting. The coffee shop sat on a corner between a hardware store and an empty storefront. Through the window, I spotted him immediately. Lucas Bennett sat in the corner booth, his back to the wall. Maybe 30 years old, dark hair, lean build. When he saw me, he nodded once. I bought a black coffee and slid into the booth across from him. Mr. Foster, he said quietly. Thank you for coming. You said we needed to talk. So talk. He pulled out a manila folder. Inside were copies of the Key West deed, Sharon's signature at the bottom. I want you to know something first. I'm not here to take everything from you. Just $3.5 million worth. The Key West property, that's all. Sharon left me that property in a letter. Not the farm, not the other properties. I studied his face. Why should I believe you? Because 6 months ago, your son and daughter contacted me. He pulled out his phone and turned the screen toward me. They offered me a deal. Sue you for the entire $7 million. Split it 50-50. The messages were there. Brandon's number. Nicole's. Think about it, Lucas. 3.5 million or half of 7 million. I told them no, Lucas said. 2 weeks later, Brandon moved back to your farm. Why turn down that much money? Lucas looked at me for a long moment. Something in his eyes made my chest tighten. Because Sharon asked me to look after you. She knew they'd try something. You didn't know my wife. Didn't I? He pulled out a photograph. The edges were worn. She took this 15 years ago. Virginia Commonwealth Hospital. I was recovering from burns on my hands. I took the photo with trembling fingers. Sharon smiled back at me, standing beside a teenage boy with bandaged hands. But it was his voice that broke through. Stay with me. Just keep talking to me. The memory hit like a physical blow. 15 years ago. Route 60. Summer heat. I'd been driving back from Richmond when the deer appeared. I swerved hard. The truck rolled twice before slamming into an embankment. The smell hit first. Gasoline. Smoke. I was trapped, my leg pinned beneath the dashboard. Flames licked up from the hood. Then I heard the voice. Hold on, I'm getting you out. A kid. 15, maybe 16. Dark hair, eyes too old for his face. He pulled at my door, his hands blistering from the heat. The door's jammed, I gasped. Kid, get out of here. Not without you. He smashed the window with a rock. Glass rained down. He reached through, fumbling with my seatbelt. Stay with me. Just keep talking to me. The seatbelt released. He grabbed my arms and pulled. Pain shot through my trapped leg. I screamed. "I know I'm sorry." He pulled harder. "Come on." My leg came free. He dragged me 10 feet from the truck. We collapsed on the grass. 5 seconds later, the gas tank exploded. Sirens. The kids' blistered hands still gripping my shirt. EMTs swarming. Then nothing. When I woke 3 days later, they told me a teenage boy had pulled me out. Good Samaritan. They'd treated his burns and released him. No one got his name. Route 60? I whispered. 15 years ago. That was you. Lucas nodded. You kept saying your wife's name. Sharon. Tell Sharon I'm sorry. When I was in the hospital, she came to visit. She said you were her husband, that you were okay because of me. She never told me. I asked her not to. His voice was rough. After my grandfather died, I had nothing. No money for college. Sharon helped me, paid for school, sent money every month. Why didn't she tell me? Because she had other secrets. Lucas met my eyes. And she was afraid if she told you about me, you'd start asking questions. The photograph slipped from my fingers. Sharon smiling beside the boy who'd saved my life. The boy she'd been supporting in secret for 15 years. The boy who was her son. Your children want me to sue you into the ground, Lucas said. They think if they prove you're incompetent, they'll get control of everything. And what do you want to stop them? His voice was firm. Sharon left me that property for a reason, but she left the farm to you. She wanted you protected. The last time I saw her, she said, if anything happens to me, watch out for Greg. They'll come for him eventually. Lucas stood, reached for his wallet. He pulled out a worn piece of paper and placed it in front of me. Sharon's handwriting. Lucas, if you're reading this, I'm gone. Greg doesn't know about you yet, and that's my fault. I was afraid, but he needs to know now. You saved his life once. Please help save it again. The children I raised have become people I don't recognize. Watch over Greg. Tell him I'm sorry. Tell him I loved him, always. Sharon. My vision blurred. I didn't come to take anything from you, Greg. Lucas's voice was gentle. Sharon asked me to look after you. You saved me by surviving that accident. Now let me return the favor. I looked up at him, at the scar on his hand, at Sharon's letter, at the truth I'd been blind to. What do we do now? Lucas sat back down. We fight back. Together. We spent 2 hours in that coffee shop. By the time we left, we had a plan. Lucas drove me to a law office in Richmond that afternoon. Catherine Brooks was younger than I expected, maybe 40, with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense handshake. Her office walls were covered with framed certifications and photographs of courtroom victories. Mr. Foster, she said, gesturing to a chair. Lucas has told me everything. I've reviewed the documents. Your children are building a conservatorship case against you. Can they do that? If they can prove you're mentally incompetent, yes. Catherine pulled out a legal pad. But here's what we're going to do. Lucas will file an amended petition. Instead of claiming the full $7 million, he'll ask for only 3 properties, the Key West property plus 2 others. Total value $4.2 million. The rest stays with you. Why would that help? Because it shows Lucas isn't trying to bankrupt you. It shows he's reasonable, and it forces your children to show their hand. She leaned forward. When they realize Lucas won't help them destroy you, they'll escalate. That's when we catch them. Lucas spoke quietly. Greg, you mentioned symptoms, forgetting things, feeling foggy. I nodded. Started about 2 weeks after Brandon moved in. We need to test for that. Catherine picked up her phone. I'm calling Dr. Andrew Coleman. He specializes in toxicology. An hour later, I was sitting in a private clinic while Dr. Coleman drew my blood. He was in his 50s with gray hair and the calm demeanor of someone who'd seen everything. "Mr. Foster," he said as he labeled the vials. "I'm going to run a comprehensive drug screen. If someone's been giving you something, we'll find it." "How long?" "I'll put a rush on it. 2 days." I drove home that evening with Lucas's words echoing in my mind. They'll escalate. Brandon's truck was in the driveway. The kitchen light was on. I could see him through the window sitting at the table with his laptop. My son. The boy I'd taught to ride a bike, to drive a tractor, to be a man. I walked inside. Brandon looked up and smiled. "Hey, Dad, where were you?" "Town. Had some errands." I poured myself a glass of water from the tap, not the coffee pot. "How was your day?" "Good, quiet." He closed his laptop. "Hey, did you think any more about what Nicole and I talked about? The trust." I sat down across from him. "I've been thinking about it." His eyes lit up. "Yeah. I want to do what's right for the family." The lie tasted bitter. "Maybe we should sit down with Stanley again. Go over everything one more time." Brandon's smile widened. "Wow, that's great, Dad. Really great. I'll call Nicole. Maybe we can all meet tomorrow." "Sure, tomorrow." That night, I didn't touch the coffee he made me for breakfast. I poured it down the sink when he wasn't looking. By noon, my head was clearer than it had been in weeks. Dr. Coleman called the next afternoon. "Mr. Foster, we found something." His voice was grim. Benzodiazepines. Consistent low doses over an extended period. Enough to cause confusion, memory problems, drowsiness. Not enough to kill you, but enough to make you seem incompetent. My hands clenched around the phone. "How long has this been going on?" "Based on the metabolites in your system, I'd estimate 2 to 3 weeks. Possibly longer." 2 to 3 weeks. Exactly when Brandon moved in. "Can you document this?" I asked. "Already done. I'll send the full report to Ms. Brooks." I hung up and stared at the phone in my hand. My son had been poisoning me. Slowly. Deliberately. Making me forget things so he could build a case that I wasn't competent to manage my own affairs. Catherine called an hour later. "Greg, we have what we need. Dr. Coleman's report is damning, but we need more. We need them on record." "What do you mean?" "I mean, we need you to wear a wire. Get them talking. Get them to admit what they're doing." Lucas arrived that evening with a small recording device. It looked like a regular smartphone, but Catherine had explained it would capture everything. "You sure about this?" Lucas asked as he showed me how to activate it. "They've been drugging me for 3 weeks," I said quietly. "Yeah, I'm sure." The next morning, I called Brandon and Nicole. "I've made my decision. I'm ready to sign." They arrived within the hour. Nicole's BMW pulled up first, followed by Brandon's truck. They both walked in smiling. The recording device was in my shirt pocket, small and invisible. "Dad," Nicole said warmly, kissing my cheek. "We're so glad you're doing this. It's really for the best." "Stanley's sending over the final documents," Brandon added. "Should be here this afternoon." I nodded slowly. "Before we do this, I just want to understand. Walk me through it one more time. What happens to the farm?" "The farm stays yours," Nicole said smoothly. "The trust just protects it. Protects you. And if something happens to me, then Brandon and I manage everything, just like Mom would have wanted. Just like Mom would have wanted." I kept my face neutral. "And this Lucas Bennett situation?" Brandon's expression darkened. "We're handling it. Once the trust is signed, We'll have the authority to settle his claim. He'll get nothing. Nothing. He's a con artist, Dad. Nicole leaned forward. Mom never had another child. This whole thing is a scam. The recording device captured every word. That afternoon, I signed the trust documents, but not before Catherine had quietly altered the PDF, adding a single clause that would void everything if signed under duress or diminished capacity. Lucas filed his amended petition that same day. The hearing was moved up, not 12 days away anymore. 3 days. I went home with the recording device in my coat pocket. Tomorrow I'd give them exactly what they wanted, or at least they'd think I would. The trap was set. Now we just had to spring it. I told Brandon and Nicole I was ready to sign. Really? Nicole's voice on the phone was careful, controlled. You're sure, Dad? I'm sure, I said. You're right. I need help managing things. Let's just get it done. They arrived that evening with the documents. Stanley wasn't there. Brandon said he'd already reviewed everything, that we didn't need him for the actual signing. That should have been my first warning, but I played along. The recording device was in my shirt pocket, activated before they'd even walked through the door. We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where Sharon and I had shared thousands of meals. Nicole spread the papers out with efficient movements, her manicured nails tapping each page. It's really straightforward, Dad, she said. You're just signing over management authority. The farm stays in your name. Everything stays in your name. We're just helping you protect it. Protect it from what? I asked, making my voice uncertain, confused. From people like Lucas Bennett, Brandon said. From con artists, from making mistakes. What kind of mistakes? Nicole smiled patiently. Dad, you've been forgetting things, leaving the stove on, getting confused about dates. We're worried about you. I let my hand tremble as I picked up the pen. And after I sign this, what happens? Then we take care of everything. Brandon leaned forward. Dr. Harrison is coming tomorrow to do an assessment. Just routine. He'll confirm that this was the right decision. Dr. Harrison, a geriatric specialist, Nicole said smoothly. Very well respected. He'll just ask you some questions, make sure you're comfortable. I signed the first page slowly, making it look difficult. And the farm stays exactly as it is, Brandon assured me. Nothing changes. I signed the second page. What about Lucas Bennett? Nicole and Brandon exchanged a glance. Once this is signed, we have authority to settle his claim, Nicole said. We'll offer him something small, make him go away. How small? Maybe 50,000, Brandon said. Nuisance money, he'll take it. I signed the third page. The device in my pocket captured every word. And if he doesn't, then we fight him in court. Nicole's voice hardened. And we'll win. Once Dr. Harrison confirms your condition, we'll have everything we need. The court will see that Lucas is just trying to take advantage of a sick old man. But I'm not sick. Of course not, Dad. Brandon's tone was soothing, the kind you'd use on a child. You're just tired. You've been working too hard for too long. I signed the fourth page. What about Heritage Gardens? You mentioned that before. Nicole's smile was bright. We put down a deposit, just in case. It's a beautiful community. Assisted living. You'd have your own apartment, 24-hour care activities. You put down a deposit, just to hold a spot, Brandon said quickly. In case you ever need it, no pressure. I signed the final page. The document was complete. The trap was set. Nicole pulled out her phone. I'll text Stanley. Let him know it's done. Brandon stood up. This calls for a celebration. Coffee. Sure, I said. He moved to the coffee maker. I watched him pour from the pot, then reach into his jacket pocket. A small brown bottle. He turned his back to me as he added something to one cup. My cup. He set it in front of me with a smile. Here's to family. I raised the cup to my lips, pretended to drink. To family. When Brandon turned to refill his own cup, I poured mine into the sink behind me. You look tired, Dad, Nicole observed. Why don't you head up to bed? We'll clean up here. Yeah, I am tired. I stood slowly shuffling like an old man. Thank you both for taking care of things. That's what family does, Brandon said. I climbed the stairs, closed my bedroom door. Through the floor, I could hear their voices. He signed. Finally, Harrison comes tomorrow at 2. Make sure Dad's awake for it. He'll be awake, confused but awake. Laughter. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling until I heard their cars leave an hour later. The next afternoon, Dr. Gerald Harrison arrived exactly at 2 o'clock. He was in his 60s, wearing an expensive suit and carrying a leather bag. His handshake was perfunctory, his smile condescending. Mr. Foster, he said, settling into the living room chair. Your children have asked me to conduct an informal assessment, just to make sure you're doing well. Brandon and Nicole stood by the doorway watching. What kind of assessment? I asked. Simple questions, memory tests, nothing to worry about. He pulled out a notepad. Now can you tell me what year it is? 2024. And who is the president? I answered correctly. Good. He made notes. Now your children tell me you've been having some difficulties, forgetting things, confusion. Who told you that? Your children. They're concerned. I didn't ask for this assessment, I said clearly. I don't want to do this without my lawyer present. Harrison's expression shifted. Mr. Foster, there's no need for lawyers. This is just a friendly conversation. Then we're done conversing. Dad. Brandon stepped forward. No. I stood up. I said I don't want to do this. Get out of my house. Harrison's eyes narrowed. Mr. Foster, this kind of agitation. I said get out. I shouted, letting my voice rise to genuine anger. You come into my home, try to trick me. Dad, calm down. Nicole moved toward me. Don't touch me. I backed away, knocking over a lamp. You're all trying to take everything. Harrison was writing rapidly. Paranoid delusions, aggressive behavior, inability to regulate emotions. Get out, all of you. Harrison stood quickly, snapping his bag shut. I've seen enough. Mr. Foster clearly needs immediate evaluation. Get out. He left Brandon and Nicole following him to the porch. I could hear their voices through the door. I'm sorry, Doctor. No need to apologize. This confirms what you suspected. I'll have my report ready by tomorrow morning. Clear signs of cognitive decline and behavioral instability. Thank you, Doctor. I sank into a chair, breathing hard. The performance had been exhausting, but necessary. Brandon and Nicole came back inside. Their expressions were somber, but I caught the gleam of satisfaction in Nicole's eyes. Dad, Brandon said quietly, we're going to have to move up the conservatorship hearing for your own safety. I'm fine. You're not fine. Nicole's voice was gentle but firm. Dr. Harrison will testify that you need immediate supervision. We're going to ask the court for an emergency order. You can't do that. We can, Brandon said. And we will. It's for your own good. They left shortly after. I stayed in the living room until dark, then climbed the stairs to my bedroom. Everything seemed normal, but when I reached for the door handle, I heard it. Click. The lock, from the outside. I tried the handle. It didn't move. I was locked in my own bedroom. "Brandon," I called. The door's stuck. His voice came from downstairs, distant. "Go to bed, Dad. You need your rest." I stood there in the dark hallway, my hand on the locked door. The trap wasn't just set anymore. It had closed. I'd become a prisoner in my own home. The realization hit me fully the next morning when I tried the bedroom door again. Still locked. I knocked, then pounded. "Brandon, Nicole. Someone open this door." Footsteps on the stairs. Brandon's voice came through the wood, calm and measured. "Dad, you need to stay in there. For your own safety. You can't lock me in my own bedroom. Dr. Harrison recommended immediate supervision. We're taking you to Heritage Gardens this afternoon for a full evaluation." "I'm not going anywhere." "Dad, we have power of attorney now. You signed the papers. This is what's best for you." I heard his footsteps retreat. I was alone. I sat on the edge of my bed, forcing myself to think clearly. The recording device was still in my jacket downstairs. My phone was gone. I'd left it on the kitchen counter last night. My truck keys were in the dish by the front door. But I'd prepared for this. 3 days ago, after talking with Lucas and Catherine, I'd packed a small backpack. Nothing obvious, just the essentials hidden under my bed in an old duffel bag Sharon had used for camping. Clean clothes, copies of important documents, the blood test results Dr. Coleman had given me, and $300 in cash from the farm safe. I pulled the bag out now and checked the contents. Everything was there. The window. That was my only option. I was on the second floor, but there was a trellis below my window, the one Sharon had trained roses on for 30 years. It reached almost to the sill. If it could hold my weight, I changed into dark clothes, jeans, a black shirt, work boots. I strapped the backpack on tight. The window hadn't been opened in years. The frame was painted shut. I had to use my pocket knife to score around the edges, working as quietly as I could. Every scrape of the blade sounded deafening. Finally, the window gave. Cool night air rushed in. I looked down. The ground was maybe 12 feet below. The trellis looked sturdy, but it was old wood. 30 years of Virginia weather. I lowered the backpack first, using my belt as a rope. It dropped the last few feet with a soft thud. No shout from inside. No alarm. My turn. I climbed onto the windowsill, my heart hammering. At 67, I wasn't as agile as I'd been. My hands found the top of the trellis. The wood felt solid enough. I swung my leg over, found a foothold. The trellis creaked, but held. Hand over hand. Foot by foot. The roses tore at my arms, thorns catching on my shirt. One of my hands slipped, and I grabbed instinctively, impaling my palm on a thick stem. I bit back a curse. "Keep moving." I was halfway down when the trellis groaned. A board cracked beneath my foot. I froze, redistributing my weight. The structure swayed. "Please," I whispered to Sharon's roses. "Please hold." I moved faster, less careful. Another crack. The whole trellis tilted away from the house. I was still 6 feet up when it gave way completely. I fell tucking and rolling like I'd learned in the army 45 years ago. The impact drove the air from my lungs. Pain shot through my hip. I lay there gasping, staring up at my bedroom window. No lights came on. No shouts. I grabbed the backpack and limped toward the barn. Earl's old pickup was parked behind it, a rust bucket Ford he used for running parts. The keys were on a nail by the door, right where he always left them. The truck started on the second try engine, coughing to life. I kept the lights off, navigating by moonlight down the dirt service road that ran along the back 40 acres. The road Sharon and I used to take supplies to the far pastures. I was half a mile from the house when I finally turned the headlights on. In the rearview mirror, I saw lights blazing on at the farmhouse. I pressed the accelerator. The Sunrise Motel was 40 miles away, just off Route 81. I'd passed it 1,000 times, but never stopped. It was the kind of place that rented by the hour or the week, no questions asked. The clerk was half asleep behind bulletproof glass. I paid cash for 3 nights, gave a fake name. He didn't care. Room 12 was at the back, away from the road. I locked the door, fastened the chain, pushed a chair under the handle. Only then did I let myself breathe. I sat on the bed and looked at my hands. They were scratched and bleeding from the roses, my palm torn where the thorn had caught me. My hip throbbed where I'd hit the ground. But I was free. I pulled out the disposable phone Lucas had given me 3 days ago. If things go wrong, he'd said, use this. It's untraceable. I turned it on. The screen glowed in the darkness. 2:00 a.m. I dialed Richard's number. My brother. A retired judge who'd moved to Portland 10 years ago to be closer to his grandchildren. We hadn't spoken in months. He answered on the 4th ring, voice groggy. Hello? Richard? It's Greg. Greg. A pause. Jesus, it's 2 a.m. What's wrong? Everything, I said. And nothing, because for the first time in weeks, I'm free. What the hell are you talking about? So I told him. All of it. The messages on Brandon's phone, the hidden properties, Lucas, the poisoning, the locked bedroom, the escape. Richard was silent for a long moment when I finished. Greg, he said finally, his voice steady with the authority of 30 years on the bench. Listen to me very carefully. Do not go back to that house. Do not call Brandon or Nicole. Do you understand? I understand. Where are you now? Sunrise Motel, off 81. Stay there. I'm calling some people. Lawyers I know in Virginia. Good ones. They'll be there by morning. Richard. Greg, your children just committed elder abuse, unlawful restraint, possibly attempted fraud. When Catherine Brooks hears about this, she's going to bury them. I closed my eyes, suddenly exhausted. I didn't want it to come to this. I know. His voice softened. But it did, and now we fight back. You're not alone in this, little brother. Thank you. Get some sleep. Help is coming. I hung up and lay back on the bed, still fully clothed. Through the thin walls, I could hear a TV playing somewhere, muffled voices, the sound of the highway. My phone, Brandon's phone, technically, since mine was still at the farmhouse, remained silent. But I knew they'd be looking for me by morning. They'd check Earl's truck, realize I'd taken it. They'd call the police, report me missing, spin some story about a confused old man wandering off. But I had Richard now. I had Lucas. I had Catherine. And most importantly, I had the truth. I closed my eyes. For the first time in 3 weeks, I slept without being drugged. When I woke at dawn, there were 3 missed calls from Brandon and 2 from Nicole. I deleted them all. Richard took the 6 a.m. flight from Portland. He'd be there by noon. I spent the morning in that motel room, sitting by the window watching the parking lot. Every car that pulled in made my pulse jump. At 9:30, there was a knock. I froze. Mr. Foster. A man's voice, calm and official. Winchester Police. We'd like to speak with you. I opened the door slowly. The officer was young, maybe 30, with a fresh haircut and cautious eyes. His nameplate read, Williams. Officer Williams, I said. What can I do for you? Your son filed a missing person report this morning. Said you wandered off during the night. He's very concerned. I didn't wander off. I left. Williams pulled out a notepad. Why did you leave Mr. Foster? Because my bedroom door was locked from the outside. I held up my hands, showing the scratches from the rose thorns. I had to climb out a second-story window. His expression shifted. Your son locked you in, my son and daughter. They're trying to have me declared incompetent. They drugged me, locked me in my room, and were planning to take me to a facility against my will. Williams studied me carefully. Mr. Foster, you seem very lucid. That's because I haven't had coffee in 3 days. Check with Dr. Andrew Coleman in Richmond. He has blood tests showing I was being given benzodiazepines without my knowledge. The officer wrote everything down. Sir, these are serious allegations. They're true, and there's a hearing in 3 days where all of this will come out. Williams nodded slowly. I'll make a report, but if what you're saying is true, you should consider getting a restraining order. Already working on it. He left. I watched his patrol car pull out, then sat back to wait. Richard arrived at 1 o'clock, driving a rental sedan. He was 70, my older brother by 3 years, with gray hair and the bearing of a man who'd spent 30 years behind a judge's bench. When he walked into that motel room, I nearly broke down. Jesus, Greg, he said, pulling me into a hug. What have they done to you? Everything you can imagine. He stepped back. You look like hell. I climbed out a window last night. I heard. He set his briefcase down. I brought Dr. Coleman. We need to document your condition before Brandon and Nicole can claim you're delusional. Dr. Coleman came in and spent an hour examining me. He photographed the scratches on my hands, the bruise on my hip. He asked detailed questions about my symptoms, took notes on everything. Mr. Foster, he said finally, you show no signs of dementia or cognitive decline. What you do show are signs of systematic poisoning with sedatives. Your memory is sharp. Your reasoning is sound. I'll testify to that. Richard pulled out a folder. Show me everything. I laid it out. The blood test results, the documents about the 7 properties, the trust papers, the recording device with their voices discussing the plan. Richard listened without interrupting. When I finished, he exhaled slowly. This is elder abuse, fraud, unlawful restraint. He looked at me. Greg, they're going to face serious consequences. I just want them away from me. You may not have a choice. Once the court hears this, another knock. Richard held up a hand. That'll be Catherine and Lucas. Lucas came in first, followed by Catherine Brooks. She was all business tablet already out. Mr. Foster, she said, we need to move fast. The hearing is in 3 days. We need counter motions, restraining orders, and testimony prepared. Richard's testifying. My brother nodded. As a retired judge and family member, expert witness on competency evaluations, the court will listen. Catherine pulled up a document. I've drafted an emergency motion for temporary restraining orders against Brandon and Nicole. We're also moving to void the trust based on fraud and diminished capacity. What about Lucas's claim? I asked. Lucas spoke quietly. My amended petition stands. 3 properties for $2 million total. Catherine's recommending an independent mediator verify Sharon's intent. And I have something else, Catherine said with a thin smile. I served Heather with a subpoena this morning. She's agreed to testify in exchange for immunity. Immunity from what? From being charged as an accomplice. Heather knew about the poisoning. She knew about the forged signatures. Now she's willing to tell the court everything. Richard leaned forward. Greg, we have everything we need. Medical evidence, financial evidence, multiple witnesses, and you lucid, competent, and credible. I looked around the room. My brother, my wife's hidden son, a lawyer I'd met days ago, a doctor who'd exposed the poisoning, 3 days, I said. Catherine nodded. Then let's get to work. We spent the afternoon going over every detail. Catherine took my statement, prepared questions for the hearing. Lucas reviewed the property documents. Dr. Coleman finalized his report. Richard made calls to other lawyers and judges building support. By evening, we had a strategy. Richard ordered pizza. We ate in that cramped motel room, papers spread across the bed, our plan taking shape. They'll argue you're paranoid, Catherine said. All that you've turned against your own children because of cognitive decline. Let them, Richard said. We have the blood tests. We have the recordings. We have Heather's testimony. Lucas was quiet, studying the property documents. Finally, he looked up. Greg, there's something you should know. Sharon left letters for each property, explaining why she kept them secret, why she wanted me to have them. Where are they? With Catherine. We'll present them at the hearing. I nodded, too tired to ask more questions. By midnight, we were done. The case was ready. Catherine and Lucas left. Dr. Coleman headed to his hotel. Richard stayed, pulling up a chair. You okay, little brother? I don't know yet, I said honestly. Ask me in 3 days. He squeezed my shoulder. 3 days, then this ends. For the first time since this nightmare began, I wasn't fighting alone. I had a team. I had evidence. I had truth. And in 3 days, I'd have justice. Dr. Coleman spent 4 hours examining every aspect of my mind. We sat in Richard's hotel room the day before the hearing. Catherine was there taking notes. Lucas listened quietly from the corner. Richard watched with the clinical eye of someone who'd seen hundreds of competency evaluations from the bench. Dr. Coleman started with memory tests. Mr. Foster, I'm going to say 3 words. I want you to remember them. We'll come back to them later. The words are apple, table, penny. Can you repeat those? Apple, table, penny. Good. Now can you tell me what you had for breakfast 3 days ago? I thought back. Oatmeal, with blueberries, at the motel. I made it in the room with the coffee maker because I didn't want to go out. And the day before that, nothing. I was too nervous to eat. He made notes. Who is the current president? I answered. He asked about current events, recent news, the state governor. I answered everything correctly. Now I'm going to give you a series of numbers. I want you to repeat them backward. 2749. 9472. Good. 53816. 61835. He moved to problem solving. You have 3 pills. You need to take 1 every half hour. How long will they last? 1 hour. If you're facing north and turn left, then turn left again. Which direction are you facing? South. A shirt and a tie cost $110 total. The shirt costs $100 more than the tie. How much does the tie cost? I paused, working through it. $5? He smiled slightly. Most people say 10. You're doing very well. The questions continued. Logic puzzles, math problems, pattern recognition, reading comprehension. He showed me images and asked me to recall details. He tested my ability to plan, to reason, to understand abstract concepts. After 2 hours, he moved to technology. Mr. Foster, do you use a smartphone? Yes, an iPhone. Can you describe how you'd send a text message? I walked him through it. He asked about email, online banking, video calls. I answered everything. Do you manage your own finances? I have for 40 years. Farm accounts, personal accounts, investments. I know every penny that comes in and goes out. Have you made any major financial mistakes recently? No. The only mistake I made was trusting my children. Dr. Coleman set his notepad down. Mr. Foster, I'm going to tell you something off the record. In 30 years of practice, I've evaluated hundreds of elderly patients for competency. Some needed help, some didn't. You. He leaned forward. You're sharper than most people half your age. Your memory is excellent. Your reasoning is sound. Your judgment is intact. There is absolutely no cognitive decline here. Catherine smiled. Will you testify to that effect? Absolutely. And I'll bring the blood work showing he was systematically drugged to create the appearance of incompetence. He turned to me. Well, Mr. Foster, what your children did to you is criminal. The court will see that tomorrow. Can you remember those 3 words I gave you at the beginning? He asked. Apple table penny. He closed his folder. Perfect. They left shortly after. Richard offered to stay, but I told him I needed time alone. He understood. I sat in that motel room as evening turned to night, staring at my phone. At the photos I'd managed to save before Brandon locked me in. Brandon at 5, gap-toothed and grinning, sitting on a tractor. Nicole at her college graduation, Sharon's arm around her shoulders. Sharon and me on our wedding day, both of us impossibly young. My family. Or what used to be my family. I scrolled through the messages I'd ignored. 12 from Brandon, 8 from Nicole. All variations of the same theme. Dad, where are you? We're worried about you. Please come home. Dad, you're not thinking clearly. This is for your own good. I read them all. Then I deleted everyone. Tomorrow, they'd sit across from me in a courtroom. Tomorrow, they'd try to convince a judge I was incompetent, that they were just trying to help, that I'd wandered off in confusion. And tomorrow, I'd show them exactly how competent I was. I pulled out the old photo of Sharon I kept in my wallet, taken 30 years ago when we were young, and the farm was thriving, and our children still looked at us with love instead of calculation. I wish you were here, I whispered to the photo, and I wish you could tell me what to do. But Sharon was gone, and the secrets she'd kept had set all of this in motion. Lucas was her son. She'd hidden him for 30 years. She'd supported him, loved him, kept him safe, all while I knew nothing. Part of me was angry about that, hurt that she hadn't trusted me with the truth. But another part understood. Sharon had been protecting him, maybe protecting me too. She'd known Brandon and Nicole better than I had. She'd seen what they were becoming, and she'd left Lucas with instructions. Watch over Greg. Blood didn't make a family. I understood that now. Brandon and Nicole shared my DNA, but they drugged me, imprisoned me, tried to steal everything I'd built. Lucas was a stranger 6 days ago, but he'd saved my life twice, once from a burning car, once from my own children. Family wasn't blood. Family was the people who stood beside you when everything fell apart. I set the alarm for 7 a.m. The hearing started at 10. By noon, everyone would know the truth. I lay back on the bed, still fully clothed, and closed my eyes. Tomorrow, this ended. One way or another, tomorrow, I'd be free. I didn't sleep. But I was ready. At 6:45 a.m., my phone buzzed. A text from Lucas. We'll be there at 9. You're not alone in this. I typed back, I know. Thank you. At 7:00 a.m. exactly, the alarm went off. I got up, showered, put on the one clean shirt I had left. In the mirror, I looked older than 67, tired, worn down. But my eyes were clear, and I was ready to fight. If you're still watching, comment "Justice" below so I know you're with me. Please note, while based on real elder abuse cases, some details have been dramatized. The core truth remains: children can betray their parents for money. If you're ready to see what happened in that courtroom, keep watching. Judge Susan Mitchell called the hearing to order at exactly 10 o'clock. The courtroom was smaller than I'd expected. Wood-paneled walls, fluorescent lights, rows of empty benches, except for the front where we sat. Catherine was on my left, Richard on my right. Lucas sat behind us with Dr. Coleman. Across the aisle, Brandon and Nicole sat with their lawyer, a thin man in an expensive suit named Gerald Morse. They hadn't looked at me once since I'd walked in. Judge Mitchell was in her 50s. Gray hair, pulled back reading glasses perched on her nose. She reviewed the documents in front of her without expression. "This court will address 3 consolidated matters," she said. Lucas Bennett's property claimed the validity of a family trust signed by Gregory Foster and questions regarding Mr. Foster's mental capacity. She looked up. "Ms. Brooks, I understand you filed an amended petition." Catherine stood. "Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Bennett is withdrawing his original claim for the full estate. He's now requesting only 3 properties with a combined value of approximately $4.2 million. The remaining 2, $8 million in assets would revert to Mr. Gregory Foster." Judge Mitchell's eyebrows rose slightly. "That's an unusual change." Mr. Bennett approached the stand. Lucas walked forward, was sworn in, and sat down. He looked calm, but I saw his hands grip the armrests. "Mr. Bennett," Judge Mitchell said, "explain why you're reducing your claim by nearly half." Lucas took a breath. "Because I don't want everything, Your Honor. I only want what Sharon Foster intended for me to have." "And who was Sharon Foster to you?" "She was my biological mother." The courtroom went completely silent. "Sharon Foster gave birth to me in 1994. Lucas continued, his voice steady. "She kept my existence secret from her husband and other children, but she supported me financially my entire life. She paid for my education. She helped me become who I am today." "Do you have proof of this relationship?" Catherine stood. "Your Honor, we've submitted Sharon Foster's letters, financial records, showing regular payments to Lucas Bennett over 15 years, and a birth certificate listing Sharon Foster as mother." Judge Mitchell reviewed the documents. "Continue, Mr. Bennett." "Sharon left me letters explaining everything," Lucas said. "She wanted me to have the Key West property and 2 other places she'd purchased specifically for me. She didn't want me to have everything, just what she'd promised." "Then why did you originally file for the full estate?" "I didn't know the full story at first. I only knew Sharon had hidden assets, and I was entitled to part of them. But after I learned the truth..." He paused. "After I met Gregory Foster and understood what was really happening, I changed my petition." "What do you mean, what was really happening?" Lucas pulled out his phone. "Your Honor, 6 months ago, I was contacted by Brandon and Nicole Foster. I'd like to enter these emails into evidence." Catherine brought printed copies to the judge. I watched Judge Mitchell's expression change as she read. "Mr. Bennett," she said slowly, "these emails appear to show Brandon and Nicole Foster offering you a deal. Is that correct?" "Yes, Your Honor. They offered to help me sue Gregory Foster for the entire $7 million. In exchange, we'd split it 50-50. They said they'd provide testimony that their father was mentally incompetent and that he couldn't manage his affairs. That I deserved everything." The courtroom erupted. Brandon shot to his feet. "That's a lie." Judge Mitchell's gavel cracked like thunder. "Mr. Foster, sit down." Lucas continued, his voice cutting through the chaos. "I said no. I told them I didn't want to destroy their father. That's when they stopped responding to my calls. 2 weeks later, Brandon moved into Gregory Foster's home." "And then what happened?" Judge Mitchell asked. "They did exactly what they'd planned to do to him with my help, but they did it alone. They claimed he was incompetent. They got him to sign a trust giving them control of everything. And when he started asking questions..." Lucas looked directly at Brandon and Nicole. They locked him in his bedroom and tried to have him committed. Your Honor, this is completely— Gerald Morse stood up. Sit down, Mr. Morse, Mr. Bennett. Do you have evidence of these allegations? Yes, Your Honor. Lucas gestured to Catherine. Gregory Foster has medical evidence showing he was systematically poisoned with sedatives. He has recordings of Brandon and Nicole discussing their plan. He has witness testimony. And he has Heather Foster, Brandon's ex-wife, who's agreed to testify about the entire conspiracy. Judge Mitchell set the papers down. Her expression was stone. Mr. Morse, I assume you're going to tell me this is all fabricated. Gerald Morse stood slowly. Your Honor, my clients maintain that their father is suffering from paranoid delusions. Then let's hear from Mr. Foster himself. Judge Mitchell looked directly at me. Mr. Gregory Foster approached the stand. I stood on shaking legs. Catherine squeezed my shoulder as I passed. I was sworn in, sat down, and looked out at the courtroom. Brandon and Nicole stared at me with expressions I didn't recognize. Anger, fear, something else I couldn't name. Judge Mitchell leaned forward. Mr. Foster, I'm going to ask you some very direct questions. Are you currently taking any medications that might affect your judgment? No, Your Honor. Do you understand why we're here today? Yes. My children are trying to have me declared incompetent so they can take control of my assets. And is that what you believe is happening? I took a breath. I know it's what's happening, Your Honor, because I have proof. Judge Mitchell nodded. Then I want to hear everything. Start from the beginning. Tell me what happened. I looked at Brandon and Nicole one last time. Then I told the truth. All of it. When I stepped onto the witness stand, Brandon wouldn't meet my eyes. Judge Mitchell adjusted her reading glasses. Mr. Foster, please tell the court in your own words what happened. Start from the beginning. I took a breath. It started 3 weeks ago at 2 a.m. I walked them through it all, waking up for water, seeing the blue glow under Brandon's door, finding him asleep at his desk, his phone displaying messages with Heather. What did those messages say? Judge Mitchell asked. They talked about moving something, about a secret that had been hidden for 30 years, about splitting something 60-40. What did you do? I didn't confront him. Something told me I needed to understand what was happening first. The next morning after Brandon left, I searched my late wife's office. And what did you find? A hidden compartment behind a bookshelf. Inside was a metal box containing a birth certificate for Lucas Bennett, born 1994. Mother Sharon Foster. Father unknown. There were also property deeds, 7 of them. Total value approximately $7 million. I heard murmuring in the courtroom. Judge Mitchell silenced it with a look. One property was in Key West, Florida, worth $3.5 million. 6 others scattered across the country. My wife had hidden an entire real estate portfolio from me for 30 years. Did you know about Lucas Bennett? No, not until I found those documents. Sharon never told me she had another son. Judge Mitchell made notes. Continue. I drove to the county clerk's office in Winchester. I requested all property records under Sharon's name. That's when I discovered something else. Heather Foster, Brandon's ex-wife, had placed a lien on one of the Virginia properties 2 weeks earlier. What did that tell you? That Brandon and Heather were still working together despite their divorce. That this wasn't just about Brandon needing a place to stay. This was planned. I described the family meeting, Nicole arriving, the trust documents spread across my kitchen table, their insistence that I sign immediately because of Lucas's lawsuit. And they said I needed protection, that Lucas was a con artist, that if I didn't sign, I'd lose everything. Did you believe them? Not after I met with Stanley Griffin, my family lawyer. He told me Brandon had forged my signature to access a sealed letter Sharon had left. A letter meant for Lucas. Judge Mitchell's expression hardened. Your son forged your signature, yes, Your Honor, to steal information from my late wife's legal files. Go on. That's when the strange things started happening. I paused, choosing my words carefully. I started forgetting things. Where I'd put my truck keys, conversations I'd had the day before. I'd wake up exhausted even after sleeping 10 hours. I'd lose focus in the middle of sentences. Brandon started documenting everything, writing down every time I seemed confused, every mistake I made. Did you seek medical attention? Not at first. I thought it was stress, grief over Sharon's secrets. But then I noticed something. The coffee Brandon made every morning tasted bitter. Different. What did you do? I ran an experiment. One morning, I skipped breakfast entirely. Poured the coffee down the sink when Brandon wasn't looking. By noon, my head was clearer than it had been in weeks. So the next morning I drank the coffee again. Within 2 hours, I was exhausted and foggy. What did you conclude? That my son was putting something in my coffee. Judge Mitchell turned to Catherine. Ms. Brooks, you mentioned medical evidence. Yes, Your Honor. Dr. Andrew Coleman performed a comprehensive toxicology screen. Dr. Coleman, please approach. Dr. Coleman was sworn in. He carried a folder thick with documents. Dr. Coleman, Judge Mitchell said, what did you find? I found benzodiazepines in Mr. Foster's blood, specifically a low but consistent dose administered over several weeks. What do benzodiazepines do? They're sedatives. At low doses, they cause drowsiness, confusion, memory problems, and difficulty concentrating. Symptoms that could easily be mistaken for dementia or cognitive decline. Would these symptoms be permanent? No. Once the drug is discontinued, the symptoms resolve within days. Mr. Foster showed no signs of actual cognitive impairment. His memory, reasoning, and judgment were all intact. He was simply being drugged. Was the dose lethal? No. It was carefully calibrated enough to make him appear incompetent, but not enough to cause serious harm or death. Whoever administered this knew exactly what they were doing. Judge Mitchell looked at Brandon. Mr. Brandon Foster, did you give your father benzodiazepines without his knowledge? Gerald Morse stood. Your Honor, my client. I asked Mr. Brandon Foster a direct question. Brandon's face was white. I know. I would never, Ms. Brooks, Judge Mitchell said. You mentioned recordings. Catherine stood. Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Foster wore a recording device during his final conversation with Brandon and Nicole Foster. We'd like to play that recording now. She connected a small speaker. My voice filled the courtroom. Walk me through it one more time. What happens to the farm? Nicole's voice smooth and reassuring. The farm stays yours. The trust just protects it. And if something happens to me, then Brandon and I manage everything. And this Lucas Bennett situation. Brandon's voice harder now. Once the trust is signed, we'll have the authority to settle his claim. He'll get nothing. Nothing. He's a con artist, Dad. The recording continued, their voices discussing Heritage Gardens, the deposit they'd already paid, Dr. Harrison's assessment the next day. Then Brandon, once Dr. Harrison confirms your condition, we'll have everything we need. Judge Mitchell raised her hand. Catherine stopped the playback. There's more, Catherine said. Later that evening, after Mr. Foster signed the trust, which we'll demonstrate was modified to include a duress clause, Brandon made him a celebratory coffee. We have video of Brandon adding something to that coffee from a small bottle. She played the video. Brandon's back to the camera, his hand reaching into his jacket, tipping something into the cup. The courtroom was silent. The next afternoon, I continued. Dr. Gerald Harrison arrived. He tried to conduct a competency evaluation. When I refused to participate without my lawyer present, I became agitated deliberately. I wanted him to see what he expected to see. Why? Because I needed them to think their plan was working. Dr. Harrison left and wrote a report saying I was paranoid aggressive and showing signs of severe cognitive decline. And then what happened? My voice was steady. That night they locked me in my bedroom, from the outside. When I tried the door, it wouldn't open. Brandon told me through the door that I was being taken to Heritage Gardens the next morning for a full evaluation. What did you do? I climbed out a second-story window. At 67 years old, I climbed down a rose trellis in the dark and drove 40 miles to a motel where I called my brother. Judge Mitchell looked at me for a long moment. Mr. Foster, let me make sure I understand. Your children drugged you, forged your signature, locked you in your bedroom, and attempted to have you declared incompetent, all to gain control of a $7 million estate. Yes, Your Honor. And you have medical evidence recordings and witness testimony to support this? Yes, Your Honor. She looked at Brandon and Nicole. They didn't want to help you. They wanted to erase you. I nodded. My own children poisoned me, forged my signature, and imprisoned me. All for money. Judge Mitchell's gavel came down. We're taking a 15-minute recess. When we return, I want to hear from Heather Foster, and then I'll make my ruling. Heather stepped onto the witness stand like she'd been waiting for this moment her entire life. She was 40, blonde, wearing a navy suit. She didn't look at Brandon once as she was sworn in. Judge Mitchell leaned forward. Ms. Foster, you've been granted immunity in exchange for truthful testimony. Do you understand that if you lie, that immunity is void? I understand, Your Honor. Then tell us what happened. Heather took a breath. Brandon contacted me 2 months after our divorce. He said he had a business proposal, a way for both of us to make money. What was the proposal? He wanted to have his father declared incompetent, take control of the estate. He said there were hidden assets worth millions. And what was your role? I work in pharmaceutical sales. Brandon asked me to get him benzodiazepines, low-dose sedatives. He'd put small amounts in his father's morning coffee, just enough to make him seem confused. Judge Mitchell's expression was ice. And you agreed? Yes. Brandon promised me 40%. He and Nicole would split 60%. How long did this go on? 3 weeks. Brandon moved in and started immediately. He kept notes of every symptom every time Greg forgot something, seemed confused. He was building a case. Did you know about the plan to lock Mr. Foster in his bedroom? Yes. Brandon told me the night before. He said Dr. Harrison's evaluation hadn't gone well. Nicole suggested they lock him in until they could get him to Heritage Gardens. And you didn't report this. Heather's jaw tightened. I should have, but I wanted the money. Catherine approached with printed screenshots. Your Honor, these are text messages between Brandon and Heather spanning 2 months. They discussed the entire plan. Judge Mitchell read silently. The courtroom was quiet. These messages show premeditation, conspiracy. You 3 planned this for months. Yes, Your Honor. Judge Mitchell looked up. Mr. Brandon Foster approached the stand. Brandon stood slowly. He looked like he'd aged 10 years. He was sworn in and sat down. Mr. Foster, you've heard the testimony. You've heard the recordings. What do you have to say? Brandon cleared his throat. Your Honor, we were just trying to help. Help. Her voice cut like a blade. You drugged your father. You forged his signature. You locked him in his bedroom. Explain how that was helping. He wasn't thinking clearly. The stress. So you decided to poison him. I didn't. It wasn't poison. Benzodiazepines administered without consent is poisoning. She picked up another document. Stanley Griffin testified you forged your father's signature. Is that true? Brandon's face went white. Yes. And did you place sedatives in your father's coffee? Silence. Mr. Foster, answer the question. Yes. Judge Mitchell turned to Nicole. Miss Foster approached the stand. Nicole stood looking defiant. She took the oath and sat with her arms crossed. Ms. Foster, what do you have to say? Your Honor, this was Brandon's idea. I just went along. I didn't know he was drugging Dad. Catherine stood. Your Honor, we have additional messages between Nicole and Brandon. They show Nicole initiated the plan. Judge Mitchell read them, her expression darkening. Ms. Foster, these show you contacted Brandon first. You suggested declaring your father incompetent. You found Heritage Gardens. You arranged Dr. Harrison. She looked up. You were the architect of this conspiracy? Nicole's defiance cracked. He was going to lose everything to Lucas. So you decided to take it first. We're his children. You deserved nothing. Judge Mitchell's voice was steel. You forfeited any inheritance the moment you started poisoning your father. She gestured to Stanley Griffin in the back row. Mr. Griffin, approach. Stanley came forward, pale and shaken. He was sworn in. Mr. Griffin, you've been the Foster family lawyer for 20 years. Yes, Your Honor. And Brandon presented you with what he claimed was Greg's written permission. Yes. I should have verified it. I didn't, and I deeply regret that. Was the signature forged? Yes. I've compared it to Greg's actual signature. Clear forgery. Judge Mitchell nodded. Thank you. She looked at the courtroom, at me, at Lucas, at Brandon and Nicole. I've heard enough. Every lie had crumbled. My children had nowhere left to hide. Judge Mitchell removed her glasses. Hawks Nivata, this is the most egregious case of elder abuse I have seen in 20 years. Gregory Foster was systematically poisoned by his own children to steal his estate. They drugged him, forged his signature, imprisoned him. She looked at Brandon and Nicole. You are not protectors. You are predators. Brandon's head dropped. Nicole stared ahead, jaw clenched. This court finds the trust void obtained through fraud forgery and diminished capacity caused by deliberate poisoning. All property rights revert to Gregory Foster. Catherine squeezed my hand. Furthermore, I am granting Lucas Bennett's amended petition. 3 properties worth $4.2 million will be transferred to Mr. Bennett per Sharon Foster's clear intent. The remaining 2, $8 million returns to Gregory Foster. She paused. I am issuing immediate restraining orders against Brandon and Nicole Foster. You are prohibited from contacting your father or approaching his property. Violation means immediate arrest. Brandon's lawyer started to stand. Judge Mitchell cut him off. I'm not finished. I am referring this case to the district attorney for criminal prosecution. Charges will include elder abuse, fraud, forgery, unlawful restraint, and conspiracy. The gavel came down. This hearing is adjourned. The courtroom erupted. Brandon buried his face in his hands. Nicole stood frozen. I sat there unable to move. It was over. Richard gripped my shoulder. You did it. Lucas leaned forward. It's finished. I stared at my children across the aisle. They'd tried to destroy me, and they'd destroyed themselves instead. Judge Mitchell didn't need time to deliberate. She stood behind the bench, her expression carved from stone. The courtroom fell silent. In 20 years on this bench, I have presided over custody battles, estate disputes, and financial exploitation cases. But this is the most egregious case of elder abuse I have ever encountered. Brandon stared at his hands. Nicole's jaw was clenched tight. This court has heard testimony that Gregory Foster, a competent and intelligent man, was systematically poisoned by his own children over 3 weeks. The purpose was calculated to make him appear incompetent so they could seize his assets. Judge Mitchell picked up the evidence. The evidence is overwhelming. Medical testimony confirms benzodiazepines. Audio recordings capture their plan. Text messages detail the conspiracy. Stanley Griffin confirmed Brandon Foster forged his father's signature. She paused. Furthermore, Gregory Foster was imprisoned in his own home. At 67, he was forced to climb out a second-story window to escape. This is not a family dispute. This is criminal conduct. Gerald Morse, their attorney, stood slowly. Your Honor. Sit down. Judge Mitchell's voice cut through the air. Your clients admitted to drugging their father. They admitted to forgery. There is nothing left to argue. She looked down at her notes. This court makes the following findings and orders. I held my breath. First, the family trust signed by Gregory Foster is hereby declared void. It was obtained through fraud, duress, and diminished capacity caused by deliberate poisoning. All property rights revert immediately to Gregory Foster. Catherine exhaled. Richard squeezed my shoulder. Second, regarding Lucas Bennett's petition, this court finds clear evidence Sharon Foster intended Lucas to receive specific properties. Therefore, Lucas Bennett is awarded the Key West property valued at $3.5 million, plus 2 additional properties totaling $4.2 million. Lucas sat perfectly still. The remaining properties valued at $2.8 million, along with the 200-acre farm, remain the sole property of Gregory Foster. Judge Mitchell looked at me. Mr. Foster, your farm is yours. Your assets are yours. I nodded, unable to speak. Third, this court issues immediate restraining orders against Brandon and Nicole Foster. You are prohibited from contacting Gregory Foster by any means. You are prohibited from coming within 500 feet of his person or property. These orders remain in effect for 1 year minimum. Brandon dropped his head into his hands. Fourth, this court is referring this matter to the Winchester District Attorney for criminal prosecution. Recommended charges include poisoning with intent to incapacitate, forgery, elder abuse, unlawful restraint, and conspiracy to commit fraud. All felonies. The words hung like a death sentence. You should retain criminal defense attorneys. The Commonwealth takes elder abuse seriously. You will face prison time. Nicole finally spoke, her voice breaking. Your Honor, please. Ms. Foster, you coordinated a months-long conspiracy to drug and imprison your father. You forged documents. You hired a corrupt doctor. Judge Mitchell's eyes were ice. There is no mercy here. Nicole's composure shattered. Tears streamed down her face. The gavel came down. This hearing is concluded. All orders are effective immediately. Mr. Foster, you are free to go. The courtroom erupted. Brandon stood trying to move toward me. A court officer stepped between us. Mr. Foster, restraining order is in effect. Step back. Dad! Brandon's voice cracked. Dad, please. Step back. I looked at my son. His face was red, tears streaming. He looked like a stranger. Nicole was crying, her lawyer guiding her toward the door. She kept looking back. This isn't over. Ms. Foster, you need to leave. Lucas appeared beside me. Greg, we should go. Side exit. Richard nodded. I'll handle the press. We moved toward the door. Behind us, Brandon's voice desperate and broken. Dad, please. The door closed. The hallway was quiet. Just the four of us, me, Richard, Lucas, and Catherine. It's over, Richard said quietly. But it didn't feel over. It felt like the ending of everything I'd built. We exited through the back. The parking lot was empty. Greg. Lucas touched my arm. Are you okay? I looked at him, this young man who'd saved my life twice. Sharon's son. I don't know what I am, I said honestly. We drove to Richard's hotel. Catherine ordered food none of us touched. We sat in silence. My phone buzzed. A blocked number. I didn't answer. It buzzed again. And again. That'll be them, Catherine said. Don't answer. If they keep calling, we'll document it as violations. I turned the phone off. What happens now? I asked. Now the district attorney builds their case. They'll likely be arrested within the week. Trial will be 6 months to a year away. Will I have to testify? Probably. But Greg, they'll plea bargain. No one goes to trial on charges this solid. How much time? Felony elder abuse carries 2 to 10 years. With poisoning forgery conspiracy, they're looking at 5 years minimum. 5 years. My children would go to prison. I felt nothing. Just empty. Lucas sat across from me. Sharon would be proud of you. Would she? I just sent her children to prison. You protected yourself. That's what she wanted. He pulled out a photo, Sharon smiling, standing next to teenage Lucas. She saw this coming, Greg. She knew. Then why didn't she tell me? Because she loved you. She didn't want you to see them the way she did. He put the phone away. She was protecting you, even after she died. The sun was setting. I'd won. The farm was mine. My freedom was mine. But I'd lost my children. 3 weeks later, Richard called. Brandon and Nicole were arrested. Both posted bail. They're negotiating plea deals. They're offering Brandon 4 years, Nicole 3.5. Okay. Greg, are you? I'm fine. I wasn't fine. But I was building something new. 3 weeks after the hearing, my children put their hands in handcuffs. Brandon was arrested first. Heather had given prosecutors everything: text messages, recordings of their phone conversations, detailed testimony about how she'd obtained the benzodiazepines and delivered them to Brandon. The district attorney charged him with 5 felonies: elder abuse, poisoning, forgery, unlawful restraint, and conspiracy. His bail was set at $50,000. He posted it the same day. Nicole was arrested 2 days later. Unlike Brandon, she hired a better lawyer, one who immediately began negotiating a plea deal. In exchange for testifying against Brandon and admitting her role as the architect of the conspiracy, they'd recommend 3 years supervised probation and community service. No prison time. Brandon's lawyer tried to negotiate the same deal. The prosecutor refused. Your client administered the drugs. He forged the signature. He physically locked his father in a bedroom. Ms. Foster planned it. Mr. Foster executed it. We want him. So Nicole took the deal, and Brandon faced trial alone. I learned all this from Richard, who'd stayed in Virginia an extra month to monitor the proceedings. He'd sit in my temporary apartment, a 1-bedroom place I'd rented in Winchester, while I figured out what to do with the farm and update me over coffee. Nicole's testimony will bury him, Richard said. She's giving them everything. The timeline, the conversations, the amount of money they'd already spent planning this before Brandon even moved in with you. How much time is he looking at? 5 to 10 years. Probably closer to 10 with the poisoning charge. 10 years. Brandon would be 52 when he got out. If he got out. I should have felt something. Satisfaction, justice, relief. But I felt nothing. Just empty. The letters started arriving a week after their arrests. The first one was from Nicole, handwritten on expensive stationery. I recognized her perfect cursive from years of birthday cards and thank you notes. I didn't open it. The second letter came from Brandon, then another from Nicole, then 3 more from Brandon, increasingly desperate, based on the way my name was scrawled on the envelopes. I kept them all in a drawer unopened. Catherine had advised me not to read them. Anything they say could be an attempt to manipulate you, to get you to drop the charges or testify on their behalf. Don't engage. So I didn't. The farm sold faster than I expected. A young couple from Pennsylvania looking to start organic farming. They walked the property with the kind of reverence Sharon and I once had, talking about soil quality and water rights and the future. I signed the papers in Stanley Griffin's office. He'd been helping me manage the estate, working for free, he said, as penance for not catching Brandon's forgery. I didn't have the energy to argue. "What will you do now?" Stanley asked as I signed the last page. "I don't know yet." That was the truth. I'd spent 40 years on that farm. It was supposed to be my legacy, my children's inheritance. Instead, it was just land I couldn't look at anymore. Without remembering Brandon's truck in the driveway, Nicole's BMW pulling up, the click of my bedroom door locking from the outside. Earl came to visit once before the sale closed. He was 74 now, still strong but moving slower. He'd been working the farm with me for 20 years. "Sure gonna miss this place," he said, standing in the barn where I'd kept Sharon's old truck. "Me too. What them kids did..." He shook his head. "I should have seen it, should have known something was wrong. It's not your fault, Earl." "Still, you was good to him. You didn't deserve that." No one deserved it, but it had happened anyway. I started seeing a therapist. Once a week, I'd sit in her office and try to explain how it felt to lose your children while they were still alive. "I don't miss who they became," I told her in our third session. "I miss who I thought they were. The kids I raised, the people I believed they'd grow into." "That's grief," she said gently. "You're mourning the loss of an illusion. It doesn't feel like an illusion. It feels like they died and were replaced by strangers. In a way they were. 2 months after the hearing, Lucas invited me to dinner. Not at a restaurant, at his apartment, a small 2-bedroom place in Richmond, near the law firm where he'd just made junior partner. I almost said no. The idea of sitting across a table making small talk, pretending everything was normal, it exhausted me. But Lucas had been texting every few days. Nothing pushy. Just checking in. "How are you doing? Need anything?" And I realized he wasn't just Sharon's son anymore. He was the only family I had left. So I went. His apartment was neat, sparsely furnished. Law books on shelves, a small kitchen, photos on the wall, and I stopped when I saw them. Sharon, younger than I remembered her, smiling at the camera, her arm around a teenage Lucas. "She sent me photos," Lucas said, coming up beside me. "Every few months, sometimes with letters, sometimes just the pictures." What did the letters say? That she was proud of me, that she wished things were different, that she hoped someday I'd meet you. He pointed to another photo. "This one's from my law school graduation. She drove down for it, stayed 2 days. We walked around campus, had coffee, talked about everything. Everything except me. No. Lucas looked at me. She talked about you all the time, about how you'd rebuilt the farm after her father died, how you'd taught Brandon to drive a tractor, how you'd helped Nicole through college. His voice softened. She loved you, Greg. That's why she didn't tell you about me. She was afraid it would break what you had. It broke anyway. Not because of her. Because of them. We sat down to dinner, nothing fancy, just pasta and salad, and talked. Really talked. Lucas told me about growing up with his grandfather, about feeling like he didn't quite belong anywhere. I told him about Sharon, about the early years on the farm, when everything felt possible. We talked about that day on Route 60, Lucas said quietly. About how young we both were. How scared. I nodded, not trusting myself to say more. The memory was still too raw. She said you kept a photo of her in your wallet, the one from your wedding day. Still do. Lucas smiled. She kept one too, of you, in her desk drawer at work. I saw it once when I visited her office. That almost broke me. The idea that Sharon had kept me close even while keeping Lucas hidden. Greg. Lucas said, Sharon told me you were a good man. She was right. I don't feel like a good man. I feel like I failed somewhere. As a father. As a husband. You didn't fail. They did. He leaned forward. You gave me 15 more years of life when you survived that accident. Let me give you something now. Let me give you a family. His voice caught on the last word. For a moment I thought he might say, it might call me what he'd never been able to say to anyone. But he didn't. Not yet. Richard's invited us both for Thanksgiving, Lucas said instead. "I in Portland. Said it's time we all sat down together as a family." A family. Yeah. Lucas met my eyes. If you want. I looked around his apartment, at the photos of Sharon, at this young man who'd saved my life, who'd turned down millions to do what was right, who was trying so hard to give me something to hold on to. I want, I said quietly. Lucas smiled. Then we'll go. Over the next few months, those weekly dinners became a lifeline. Lucas would cook, he was surprisingly good at it, and we'd talk. About Sharon, about the farm, about Lucas's cases at work, about everything except Brandon and Nicole. They were ghosts now. Names I didn't say. Letters I didn't open. Family I was learning wasn't the people who shared your blood. It was the people who chose to stay. 6 months after the hearing, I stood on the porch of my new farm and watched the sunrise. The property was smaller, 50 acres instead of 200, but it was mine. No ghosts. No memories of locked doors or bitter coffee. Just land and sky and something new. The house was modest. 2 bedrooms, a kitchen needing updates, a wraparound porch. I'd bought it with cash from selling the old farm. Earl worked for me again 3 days a week. Can't retire yet, he'd said. What would I do, get old? We rebuilt the barn, mended fences, planted a small garden. It wasn't the operation the old farm had been, but it was enough. Lucas made his own decisions about Sharon's properties. The Key West house he rented out. $4,500 a month in income. The 2 Virginia properties he sold. Used the money to buy a small house in Winchester, 20 minutes from my farm. I want to be close, he'd said. If that's okay. It was more than okay. He'd also left his Richmond firm, joining a smaller Winchester practice specializing in estate law and elder care. Seems appropriate, he'd said with a slight smile. Our weekly dinners continued. We'd cook together. He made a mean pot roast. I could manage a decent stew. We'd talk about work, about the farm, about everything except the ghosts we were leaving behind. Sunday mornings became coffee on my porch. Lucas would drive over around 7 and we'd sit in the quiet watching the valley wake up. Sometimes we'd talk. Sometimes we'd just sit. It was the kind of easy silence that took years to build. We'd built it in months. Richard came for Thanksgiving. He flew in from Portland with a bakery pie and bourbon older than Lucas. We sat around my kitchen table and ate turkey Lucas had somehow not overcooked. "I'm proud of you both," Richard said, raising his glass. "You took something terrible and built something good from it." "Good." I looked around. A half-fixed farmhouse. A life worth living. Richard said simply, "That's more than most people get after what you went through." Lucas looked down at his plate, quiet. "How are they?" I asked after a moment. Richard's expression darkened. Brandon was sentenced 3 weeks ago, 7 years. He'll serve at least 5 with good behavior. 7 years. Brandon would be 49 when he got out. And Nicole completed probation, community service at a senior center. She tried contacting you twice through my office. I didn't get messages. Because I didn't pass them along. The restraining order is still in effect. Richard took a drink. She's moved to North Carolina, working as a bookkeeper. They both want to apologize, Richard continued. Both claim they've changed. It's been 6 months. See, I told them you're not interested, that if they really want to make amends, they'll respect your boundaries. Thank you. Lucas spoke quietly. Do you think you'll ever forgive them? I thought about it. Really thought. I don't know. Maybe someday, but not now. Not when I'm finally feeling like myself again. We changed the subject. Talked about Richard's grandchildren, Lucas's new cases, my plans for chickens in the spring. Normal things. Peaceful things. Life settled into rhythm. I'd wake at dawn, make coffee, check the few cattle I'd bought. Earl would arrive by 8. We'd work until noon. Lunch was sandwiches on the porch. Lucas would stop by after work twice a week. Sometimes he'd help with repairs. Sometimes he'd just drink a beer while I worked. On weekends, he'd spend whole days learning what his grandfather never taught him. How to mend a fence, how to read weather, how to know when soil was ready. Sharon would have liked this, he said one Saturday, hammering a post. What? You teaching me. Her 2 worlds finally coming together. I wiped sweat from my forehead. She would have liked you. She did like me. Lucas smiled. She just couldn't tell you that. No, she couldn't. In the evenings, I'd sit on the porch and watch sunset over the valley. Sometimes Lucas would join me. Sometimes Richard would call. Sometimes I'd just sit alone, grateful for the quiet. The letters from Brandon and Nicole kept coming. I kept not opening them. After a while, they stopped. I was 68 now. By most measures, I should have been slowing down thinking about retirement, considering places like Heritage Gardens. Instead, I was rebuilding, starting over, learning that life didn't end when your children betrayed you. It just changed shape. At 67, I'd lost everything. At 68, I had everything that mattered. Then one Sunday morning, something happened that I'd hoped for, but never dared to expect. Lucas arrived early that Sunday morning with fresh coffee and something heavy on his mind. We sat on the porch in silence for a while, watching fog roll across the valley. Finally, he spoke. I've been thinking about something. Yeah. I never had a father. Not really. The man Sharon was with left before I was born. My grandfather raised me, but he died when I was 15. Lucas stared at his coffee. You've given me more in these 6 months than I've had in my entire life. I waited. Would it be okay? His voice caught. Would it be okay if I called you Dad? The word hung between us like a prayer. My eyes burned. That would be an honor, son. Thanks, Dad. He said it quietly, testing the weight of it. I pulled him into a hug. This young man who'd saved my life, who'd chosen me when my own children hadn't. You saved my life twice, son, I said, my voice rough. Once from the fire, once from my own family. Lucas pulled back, his eyes wet. You gave me a family. That's everything. We stood there on that porch, father and son, not by blood, but by choice. I'm 68 now. Sharon betrayed me with decades of secrets. Brandon and Nicole tried to destroy me for money. I lost nearly everything that had defined my life, my wife's honesty, my children's love, the farm I'd built over 40 years. But standing here with a son I never knew I'd have, I've never felt more whole. I learned something these past months. Age isn't weakness, it's wisdom. Family isn't blood, it's choice. And starting over isn't just possible at 68. Sometimes it's necessary. Lucas and I work the farm together now. Earl teaches him things I never learned. Richard visits more often, flying in from Portland every few months. We sit around my kitchen table like we should have done years ago. I spent 40 years being the husband Sharon wanted, trusting, unquestioning. 20 more being the father Brandon and Nicole needed, generous, easy to manipulate. Now I'm just myself. Greg Foster, survivor, fighter, father to the son who saved his life. The sun rose higher, painting the valley gold. Lucas handed me my coffee. Beautiful morning, Dad. I smiled. Yes, son. It really is. I'd lost 2 children, but I'd gained the one who mattered. Family isn't who raises you. It's who stands beside you when everything falls apart. It's who pulls you from burning cars. It's who turns down millions because it's the right thing to do. It's who shows up every Sunday morning with coffee and calls you Dad. At 67, I was poisoned, betrayed, and imprisoned by my own children. At 68, I'm free. And that's worth more than $7 million could ever buy. Now tell me, what would you do if you were in my shoes? Would you forgive your children? Would you give them a second chance? Or would you do exactly what I did? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to check out the video on your screen right now. I promise it'll surprise you. Looking back at my family story, I never imagined it would end this way. The family betrayal cut deeper than any physical wound. It made me question everything about the people I raised. But God had a plan. When I was locked in that bedroom at 67, God was already preparing Lucas to be the son I needed. When family betrayal left me broken, God was building something better. Here's what I learned from my family story. Don't wait until it's too late to ask questions. Don't ignore red flags because you love someone. I spent 40 years trusting without questioning, and it nearly cost me everything. But God doesn't waste our suffering. He showed me that family isn't about blood. It's about who stands beside you when the fire comes. When family betrayal comes, because sometimes it does, remember, God can rebuild what was destroyed. At 68, I have more family than I ever did at 67. Not the family I expected, but the one I needed. That's my family story. Broken, rebuilt, and redeemed. Thanks for making it to the end. Comment too, so I know you're still here. Heads up, this story includes dramatized elements for educational purposes. If it's not your thing, no worries, feel free to check out other content that fits you better.